Study shows that our amygdalae are actually bigger than neurotypical people. They're hyperdense, hyperconnected, and therefore we are more likely to have intense emotions linked to fight, flight, freeze, hence this episode, and fawn responses.
Mm.
And this is this is why we have to get away when we are overloaded, when we are overstimulated. When you see the look of depression in a horse's eye and they say, "Don't worry, they're used to it," you say, "Oh God, that's far too tragic. I can't handle that. I cannot let that go. I'm out." Episode 63. Elsa is autistic. Welcome to the Autistic Culture Podcast. Each episode, we dive deep into autistic contributions to society and culture by introducing you to some of the world's most famous and successful autistics in history.
Before we get started, a quick disclaimer on how we use the word autistic. The purpose of this show is not to diagnose the people or characters we discuss as autistic. While some may have announced being autistic, what we're really sharing here is our observation of what is representative of autistic culture. It can sometimes be difficult for autistic people to celebrate our natural tendencies and traits due to the perception of autism as a disorder that needs to be fixed, a long history of damaging medical interventions to get autistics to fit in with mainstream culture, and protective masking skills many of us have developed to try to stay safe.
Whether you are autistic or just love someone who is, your hosts, Dr. Angela Loria, the linguistic autistic,
and licensed psychological practitioner Matt Lowry, welcome you to take this time to be fully immersed in the language, values, traditions, norms, and identity of Autistica. Hey, Angela. Well, hey, Matt.
How is life?
Oh, life is lifing at lightning speed right now. All of my personal belongings are on a boat somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, and I am here in a very echoey room.
So, living hell then. Oh, boy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Make my life better. What do you got to info dump on me today?
Oh man. Oh, we've got a doozy today because this is an oft requested episode and the internet apparently universally agrees on it. So we are going to talk about the history of Frozen and why Elsa from Frozen is absolutely one of us.
Oh, I love Elsa. She's got frozen fractals all around. So do I some days.
We have lots and lots of background on here. We're going to talk about the drafts. We're going to talk about the evolution. We are going to talk about how Frozen resulted in the very, and this is a true thing. You're going to think I'm making it up, but it's not. But this is how Disney has its first all nude chorus line.
Okay, not believing you so far, but that's a nice teaser.
Stay
tuned for Naked Disney.
Naked Disney family time. And I witnessed it myself. It's crazy. Yes.
Okay. All right, let's start at the very beginning. I heard it's a very good place to start.
So, well, the beginning is 1844.
Okay.
So we are going to go back to our good friend, our good friend, what's his name? Hans Christian Andersen. Oh my God!
Oh, yeah, we got a throwback to an earlier episode. Go listen to Fairy Tales Are Autistic. We'll link it in the show notes. All right, hit me with some Hans Christian Andersen. He is one of us. Of course, he would write Elsa.
Of course. Because the original story that became Frozen was the Snow Queen. And the Snow Queen is all about these two kids, Kai and what was the other? Anyway, about these two kids, and this story about how this troll has a magic mirror that shatters, and when you get these shards in you, you only see the negative. So Kai becomes seduced by the dark side, by the Snow Queen, and his good friend Greta has to come save him from the Snow Queen. So Walt Disney really, really liked this story because, again, Hans Christian Andersen, Walt Disney also autistic. Check out the Disney episode. So,
Yes.
back in 1937, he started trying to figure out how to do a live action cartoon hybrid of the life of Hans Christian Andersen. So he was going to do a biography of Hans Christian Andersen intercut with all of these like stories set to animation. And the Snow
Which,
Queen
if you
was
remember from the Hans Christian Andersen story, our episode, he started off by trying to write a biography, and every time he would write it, it was like weird and nobody liked it. And then he wrote these fairy tales, which were just his biography. Like
Exactly.
The Ugly Duckling is his story. All those stories,
Exactly.
The Emperor's New Clothes is his story.
The
It
Little
was his
Mermaid.
autobiography, so it would be so easy to cut together.
Exactly. And that is the original plan. But this sort of fell apart because he got involved with this other, side project, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So Snow White was a big success. All of a sudden, Disney had more clout. By March 1940, he was going to go to MGM. MGM was going to shoot the live action scenes, whereas Disney was going to do the fairy tales. But then World War II happened, and that sort of thing kind of fell apart. In 1952, MGM finished the live action Hans Christian Andersen film, but Disney did not go through with all of the animated projects. So it was kind of put on the shelf. But after the success of like Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, two other things that are heavily autistic, see the Beauty and the Beast episode, it was the Disney Renaissance, and they said, hey, we need some more fairy tales. But then all of a sudden the market got very, very cynical after the 90s, and no one wanted a classic fairy tale princess story anymore. So they started working on Tangled. And Tangled was released in 2010, and they said, hey, this newfangled 3D animation, I bet we could try to use this 3D animation to make a story. So they started on what would eventually become Frozen, with several drafts going through, but they kept running into snags with how to make this story relatable. Because again, the original story, you have a troll, you had robbers, you had all of these interesting Norwegian elements that were interesting, but didn't quite resonate with a 20-aughts audience. So they started trying to see how they could spice things up. For a while, Amy Winehouse was going to play Elsa.
Okay, probably not badly cast.
And so Elsa, have you ever seen Emperor's New Groove?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
yeah, I love
it. Ismay's character, how very angly and pointy, and sort of evil queen, mad scientist sort of thing. That was the vibe they were going for Elsa at the time. Elsa had blue skin, dark blue hair, very pointy, very. Anna didn't change at all. Anna was originally this little redhead and Elsa, or the character of the Snow Queen at the time, was going to have dark blue hair, very pointy, she was going to have a cloak made of weasels, the living weasels that would just run up and get all over her, and that would be her cloak. And so Amy Winehouse was going to be the character of Elsa. Then they decided they were going to do Bette Midler. And then they actually hired Megan Mullally.
Okay.
And Megan Mullally was going to be the evil Ice Queen. So they decided that it was going to be a musical. So they went to the pair of Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez. The story is by Jennifer Lee, script by Jennifer Lee.
We love sharing stories of autistic culture, and if you are seeing yourself in any of these stories and you're wondering if maybe you're one of us, or maybe you're already diagnosed or self-diagnosed, and you want to know if Matt can help you live your life better and be more authentically autistic, check out his website at mattlowrylpp.com. That's Matt, M-A-T-T, Lowry, L-O-W-R-Y. And then that LPP, it stands for Licensed Psychological Practitioner. So head on over to mattlowrylpp.com and learn more about working with my buddy Matt.
And then afterwards, they started writing all these songs, and there were a lot of unfinished songs, a lot of songs that were eventually scrapped, like The Heir and the Spare. Because at one point they decided that in order to make this story work, instead of random Snow Queen and now Anna, they were going to make Anna and Elsa sisters. Elsa was going to be isolated her entire life, go off into the mountains, raise an army of evil snowmen, and come back and take over the kingdom, and they would have to stop her. So there was this song, The Heir and the Spare, where Anna was overlooked because she was second born and she was just the spare button on the cloak, and she had to she didn't really have a place, but she wanted her place. She wanted to stand up, and she wanted to be herself, and she wanted to, not be somebody's old barn door just hanging around. So so there are many songs that were eventually cut, right?
Okay.
So they started looking at how to make this work. How to they decided that for a while, Elsa was going to have her heart intentionally freeze her own heart because she was jilted by her fiance, and then that's why she was going to go off and live in the wilderness and that kind of stuff. But again, they were started to focus on this part where she goes off to live in the wilderness, and that's when we got Let It Go. And Let It Go originally was just a refrain. And then they started adding lyrics to it, and they started adding more lyrics, including a kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. The wind is howling like this swirling storm inside. I couldn't keep it in. Heaven knows I tried. Don't let them in. Don't let them see. Be the good girl you always have to be.
Oh,
Conceal.
masking.
Conceal. Don't feel. Don't let them know. Well, now they know.
Well,
Let it
now
go.
they know.
Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go. Let it go. Turn away and slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold
This
never
cold
bothered
never bothered me
anyway. Yeah.
Mm.
And so this changed everything, because instead of Elsa being this monster, all of a sudden she became incredibly sympathetic.
Oh, because in the original, she's just like pure villain, like two-dimensional villain.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's why they kept running into problems, because there's no they decided that they decided that at the end they wanted the resolution to be that Anna and Elsa make up and that solved the problem, but they needed a rationale behind all of this. And in order to get there, having her be a two-dimensional villain, there was a lot of hurdles and hoops to jump through to make that happen.
Right.
But when they hit on Let It Go, they realized that Elsa was not the bad guy.
So,
They realized,
this brings up for me, and I'm going to do an episode on musicals at some point, but this brings up for me the musical Wicked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go on. We're coming to that. Go on.
Oh, really? Oh,
interesting.
Yeah. I'm just like, when you see an evil witch, a two-dimensional witch, like the Wicked Witch of the West is the prototype evil witch.
Yeah.
And what Wicked does is it comes in and brings the humanity in her side.
Yes.
But they're these two separate shows, right?
Yeah.
It's not one show. So it's very
well, you'd think, but we'll get there. Yeah.
Oh, I love this. I'm very excited. But what I think is interesting about Frozen, and maybe why it's such a sticky show, I mean, obviously the music is amazing, but is that you have both sides. And I think when you look at autistic culture, we often are just the bad. They try and do that to us
They do.
anyway. And so, and then you have a character like Steve Jobs. Apple is autistic. I think it's like episode 2 or 3. But you have like someone like Steve Jobs who you're like, oh, I love the iPhone. I love the Mac. I love what he created, but I would like to just make him a two-dimensional monster.
Yeah.
And that I think that's such a common part of our culture is like, just put them in a box as a bad guy. And so looking at like what her motivation was and everything that comes, like understanding masking through that song, there's so much more. So yes, anyway, continue.
And that Elphaba is exactly why we got Idina Menzel to play Elsa. Because
Elphaba, but yes, I love it.
Yeah, so, yeah. Sorry, I've only read it. I haven't seen the show.
Yes.
Elphaba. So yes, so up until this point, Megan Mullally was still going to be Elsa. But when we got Let It Go, so this is with an interview with Idina Menzel. She acknowledged the similarities between Elsa and Elphaba, and she mentioned
I just figured it out right now.
Yes, she said. Yeah. She said they are both very powerful, misunderstood individuals, and she herself could relate to the characters, having hidden her singing talent from her peers at school. She said, I didn't want to alienate anyone. If anyone was singing along in the car to a Madonna song, I didn't join in because when we were younger, we were afraid of sticking out or showing off when in fact we should do those things that really make us unique. And actually, she also talks about her own anxiety because she's got a ton of anxiety. And she always vocally maps out a show and has backup plans in place in case she's tired or under the weather. She said, I have a voice teacher I've been working with for over 20 years. We have a very ritualistic, disciplined approach to how I sing and how I prepare. It's just like a real project, like a map for me, so that I can technically approach it all and then be free to just be in my body and in the moment later on when it counts.
Wow.
So yeah. So when they hit upon this, they decided that Idina was the way to go with this. And indeed, they had to. I believe that the exact phrase from the screenwriter was, "Oh God, I've got to redo everything." So this is when we got the 8th draft, where it turns out that they started to add some more songs like "Do You Want to Build a Snowman," which was then cut entirely, and then added back in like 3 months before the movie. And the young daughter of the songwriters is actually young Anna in the song. And Jennifer Lee, the screenwriter's daughter, is 9-year-old Anna.
Oh, so, I love that.
Yeah, so they just they kept it in the family. So this is when they went back to redefine Elsa and Anna's childhood and how they decided that, they needed Elsa to be super repressed and super masking with phrases like, she can learn to control it, I'm sure. We'll limit her contact with people. We'll keep her hidden from everyone. And then, of course, she keeps repeating, conceal it, don't feel it. Conceal it, don't feel it. Don't let it show. And getting upset only makes it worse. Just calm down. So she, in that moment, started becoming autistic. Because as we all know, autistic people have big emotions that we are not allowed to show. Autistic people have great big reactions to things. Autistic people are very sensitive to things. Elsa can hear things other people can't hear, like when we get to Frozen 2, because we'll talk about all that. She has to wear gloves because she can't touch things because she's afraid that she will break them. But she's got a lot of sensitivities. Her body language in the early part of the movie is very, very different and very reserved, very masking, very uptight because she has to appear perfect. And even her parents, it turns out in Frozen 2, so this is another thing about Frozen the musical. Because after Frozen became a hit, the screenwriter and the songwriters, Robert Lopez, Kristen Anderson Lopez, decided, you know what? We need more songs. we need to make this even more better. So that's when they started writing the musical, where they added extra songs. For instance, like Hugo, I Can't Lose
Oh
You,
yeah.
A Little Bit of You, uh, stuff like that. Because and this is when they decided that they were already writing Frozen 2. So Frozen the musical is essentially a revision of Frozen 1. So they have scenes like the parents getting on a ship when the kids are much younger because they want to find the reason for Elsa's powers. And much like many unfortunate parents of autistic kids, they want to find a cure.
Yeah. Right. I know. I was like, her parents are giving autism mom vibes now. I liked them so much. They
Yeah,
I was never sad they died. I mean, I was
yeah,
never happy they died, but now I'm like, oh, they were completely trying to fix her.
yeah. They were trying to conceal her because they didn't want the kingdom to know that she had powers. They were trying to make her fit in. They
And it
were
was like in everyone's best interest.
Yeah, yeah. To
Mm,
hide, to conceal, to fix. And
mm,
it's very much ABA vibes.
mm.
So
Wow.
this is why Elsa grows up with a lifetime of shame because, her big emotions hurt her sister. And
Hmm.
her sister doesn't even remember, so she can't even talk about it. She has to grow up in isolation. Her sister doesn't understand why she's isolated. Anna just wants to go play, and Anna, played by Kristen Bell identifies as ADHD in real life. Check out our episode on The Good Place.
Oh yeah.
But she brings a lot of vibes to Anna, and brings out a lot of, "Hi, I just wrote a play. Hi, I would like to see this. I would like to see this." And in
You want
the
to build a snowman?
exactly. In the Broadway musical, this is really, really amplified, and it's almost explicitly mentioned in the new songs and the acting choices, because I have seen the musical, and again we're going to get to the all nude review, but yeah, it's so, well, we'll jump there. So, do you remember the scene in the original where Anna goes up on the mountain and she gets supplies from this nice Norwegian man?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. They
Yeah,
go into the shop in the middle of nowhere and
yeah.
yeah.
There's a throwaway line where he says, "You can also use my steam room," and his
Mhm.
family pops up and says, "Hello," and but they decided that for the Broadway musical, they were going to expand this into the song "Hugo," and they were going to have all of his family completely in the nude as a chorus line. So,
Perfection. That is
yes,
how I did not know. I have
no
not seen
notes.
the show
Yeah,
live.
yeah, it is.
Okay.
They're all wearing flesh tone bodysuits, but they sing about how great it is to dance in the nude. So,
Couldn't
yeah,
be better.
yes,
Could not be better.
well done. Bring us a family of naked people to the stage, Walt Disney. Because yes, that's the thing.
Fantastic.
Because that's the definition of hygge, comfort and rampant nudity.
Yes.
So this is so they sort of amped up all of the stuff with Anna being a little ADHD, Elsa being a little autistic, because again, Anna really, really wants to love somebody. She really wants to love her sister. She really wants to love Prince Hans, whom she just met and then got engaged to, and said, "Ah, yes, we've spent 8 wonderful minutes together. Let's totally get married." And because again, Elsa doesn't, beat around the bush. She says, "That's insane. Don't do that. You should not marry someone you've only known for 8 minutes." "Well, you can't judge who I love." It's like, the hell I can't. And then, of course, this is when the emotions get out of place because Anna takes off Elsa's glove and, gigantic emotions, gigantic cryokinesis is the word for Elsa's powers because it's
Ah.
really cool. So anyway, Elsa runs off into the wilderness because, again, when an autistic person gets upset, we run off into the wilderness because that is the
Oh.
way.
Okay, wait, let's stop and do a little because I only learned this term recently. So let's do a little autistic culture deep dive on eloping.
Eloping, yes.
Tell-
Eloping. It is the term that we use when we need to escape and we just run off. And
Mm.
sometimes it's being overwhelmed in a mall and you bolt out into the parking lot. Sometimes it's being so overwhelmed, like with Brie Larson, when she was rejected from auditions, she packed up her stuff and ran away from home as an 8-year-old, as
Wow.
one would do. And there are a lot of autistic kids who say, I just can't take it here anymore. I am going to run away from home. And, their parents are like, well, pack a lunch, because
Mm-hmm.
again, you run off into the lot behind you and then come
And
back.
then come home. Yep.
Yeah. But we as adults might run off and take vacations, or go off on a
Mm.
cruise, or go off to the happiest place on earth, because you just
Mm.
need to escape reality. And when
So
things are,
I
yeah.
learned this term because I was very excited at Christmas time. The Budweiser Clydesdales
Ah,
came to our
yes.
town,
Those massive
and
horses.
those massive horses, and everyone in our town was like on the streets. The streets were lit up, all the Christmas lights, and they were, I don't know, butter beering it up. Like there
Ah,
was
yes.
like, it was just like this whole community vibe, and the Clydesdales. And I was like, this will be fun. The beach is all lit up. I live in a beach town. It's like super pretty. I will go down and say, I don't normally leave my home. I don't normally like crowds, but this had like Hygge vibes to it. I was like, this is going to be some cozy hometown outdoor activity. And I got there, like dressed up. I had my little Santa hat on. I was ready to go. And I took one look at these horses, and there was so many people all around the horses. And I know they're bred this way. Like I got a lot of feedback on Facebook about my interpretation of this, but there were millions of kids. There was like no room for the horses to move. They have the blinders on. There's like heaving crowds with like dogs and people jumping. And
That's
I am
horrifying.
sure I'm wrong. I'm sure, I don't know. Everyone told me I was crazy. I am telling you, I felt very clearly those horses did not want to be there. They, to
I can imagine
me,
so. Yes.
and everyone tells me, no, maybe they just look sad. I had horse breeders telling me, like, but I am telling you, I physically could not be in the presence of those horses.
Yeah.
I ran home so fast.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous. Like we had made plans with all of our neighbors. Everyone's like, mugs of, I wasn't drinking beer, but beer and other things. I had a cream soda. And it was like this collegial. And I was like, I cannot be here with these horses.
Yeah.
This is not, it's not like running away because I'm stressed out. It was sort of like if you try and give me a food to eat that's on my unacceptable foods list, like
Yeah.
cilantro. It's not fucking happening. It's not a maybe. It's not a try harder. It's not a collect yourself and, I don't know, suffer. Have you just tried suffering?
Right.
Have you tried suffering? It is like, no, computer says no,
No.
must leave the room. So that
You have to.
eloping feeling to me, like when I learned it, because I was like, oh, I never did that. Like my kids never did that. Like that's not a thing. And then I was like, oh, I know that feeling. It's got to go. Got to
Yeah.
go.
And the reason for it is our hyperconnected amygdala. Research shows that, again, because of our hyperconnected brains, all of our brains are, but especially our amygdala. Studies shows that our amygdala are actually bigger than neurotypical people. They're hyperdense, hyperconnected, and therefore we are more likely to have intense emotions linked to fight, flight, freeze, hence this episode, and fawn responses. And this is why we have to get away when we are overloaded, when we are overstimulated. When you see the look of depression in a horse's eye and they say, don't worry, they're used to it. You say, oh God, that's far too tragic. I can't handle that. I cannot let that go. I'm out.
Okay, I don't know how we got on it. Who was eloping? Was Elsa eloping? Is it when Elsa elopes to
Elsa
her
elopes
ice
and
castle?
she goes off to where things are safe, the mountains where the snow is around. And that brings us back again to the thing that changed her character entirely, let it go. because she starts playing around with her powers. She's never been given the freedom to play with her powers. She's never been given the freedom to figure out who she is. So during the course of the song, she goes from just making ice crystals to making very complex creatures like Olaf. She makes very complex fractals, and then she just makes her own very organized, very rigid ice palace with all these excellent fractals and all of this excellent snow motif. It's highly intricate, highly detailed, all these staircases all over the place. And she says, "Fine, you all are going to scorn me. I'm okay. I'm just going to stay here. This is where I'm going to be." And that's where she stays, because again, when we run off, when we want to be by ourselves, we create our own little worlds to run off into, either externally or internally, because we just can't deal with the stress of the outside world. And that's often where we find a lot of burned out autistics, where we find a lot of autistics who have been masking for years, but they fear the rejection. But again, when they finally start to unmask, they lose a lot of the people that knew their mask.
Yeah.
And this is a big thing for us, because one of the biggest dangers of coming out is being vulnerable and losing your support system, of being vulnerable and losing the people that you once thought liked you, but just liked the mask that you wore. So it takes a lot of guts. And this is the reason why, again, when Indina Menzel sings this, she starts off with Elphaba. Again, the sort of vibe of being kind of scared, of being misunderstood, of being depressed. But then she just sort of belts it out and embraces it. And again, if you watch the music, if you watch the video, it changes in the way that she positions herself. It changes in the way that she stands. It changes the way that she breathes.
I know.
Because she's even breathing stronger and more confident.
Wow.
And that's when she lets her hair down. She goes from her masking cloak to the ice cloak. And she just says, "Fuck it, I am who I am."
Right.
And that's a declaration. And that's why everything changed. And then we don't see Elsa for several more minutes, because it was originally planned as Anna's journey.
Ah.
Yeah, because again, this was originally Anna's story, because again, Elsa was the bad guy, Anna was the protagonist.
Oh, of course, right.
So again, they had to go back.
You can't have a bad guy as a protagonist.
Yeah, so this is the reason why we don't see a lot of Elsa in her own movie, but it's also the reason why, again, when we went to see the Frozen Broadway musical, there were around, let's say, 10,000 little girls there, all dressed up meticulously as Elsa.
Wow.
Because everyone who studies the movie, everyone who really gets into it, they say, "You know who I identify with? That one." So, Elsa shows up to be awesome and dynamic, accidentally frees her sister for a little bit, but then, say, no, her love will so anyway, so we get the Hans subplot. Turns out Hans is evil, because again, we learn the lesson that people who there are a lot of people in the world who do not have your best interest at heart, who may use you to get their own needs met, who are not straight and upfront and honest, and just want you for your kingdom. So Hans says straight up, "Yeah, I was going to go for that weirdo Elsa, because nobody's going to marry her."
Right.
But man, she's like a literal ice queen. She doesn't want to be around anybody, and you're here, and you're very naive. So I was just going to be like, I'll marry you and then kill you. So and that was going to be his whole plot. So anyway, they decide that they're going to hunt down the mutant who lives on the mountain who made snow golems, named Marshmallow, by the way. So again, the neurotypicals are not making good decisions in this movie. So they go, and she's like, "Yeah, screw you guys," and they eventually capture her, and she feels very guilty. And the only reason they capture her is because she feels guilty. And then, of course, when things are resolved and Elsa gets her powers back, and she and Anna make up, they decide they can run things as they see fit. So this is there's like a 3-year jump in between Frozen 1 and Frozen 2. Elsa was 21 due to the coronation in Frozen 1, and she's 23 in Frozen 2. So there are a few things to fit in between, like the Frozen holiday special, where they think about all the customs that they don't have, because again, they've spent their childhood fairly isolated and they need some Christmas customs. And it turns out they've got a very good relationship now, and Elsa's fairly open and she wants to take care of her people. But by the time of Frozen 2, she starts to figure out who she really is. And again, because of her heightened perception, she starts hearing a voice that leads into the song Into the Unknown.
Oh,
And
so good.
It's the spirit of the Atahalan. It's the spirit of the North Uldra.
Right. They're like the little trolley people or little fairy people.
Yeah. These are the spirits of nature calling to her.
Yes.
And she realizes that everything is going to crumble for some reason or another, and she's got a strong sense of justice, as we tend to do. So she says, all right, well, I don't like the unknown, and pretty specifically calls out in the song, everything is pretty stable right now. I like what is known. I do not like going into the unknown, but I can't turn this away because you keep calling to me. So I've got to figure this out, but I don't like it. So they decide to go off into the unknown and find that it turns out that their grandfather has committed a very big injustice. And again, spoilers for a movie that came out during the pandemic. It turns out that the grandfather, again, because a lot of people mask their intentions, decided to wall up this river and make a dam and was going to conquer these people. And they figured that out and said, hey, don't do that. But it turns out that Elsa and Anna's father is of the Arendelle people, whereas, their mother is from the North Uldrons. And they have this tie with nature. They understand the spirits. And this is why Elsa's secret lineage is why she has these powers. And again, this is the thing that when autistic people unmask, they start to look through their family history and start to see that these strange powers come from someplace. You might have a parent who is highly masked. You might have a parent who doesn't tell you about their secret trains or secret horse that they keep in the basement, or secret desire to organize the kitchen in a way that makes sense and doesn't make your brain cry. Because this is a big thing for us. We have this lineage, we have this legacy, and we have to go on a hero's journey of our own in order to figure out who we are and figure out what we need and figure out our real place in the world. Because while Elsa, is happy being queen, it's not really her thing. Anna's like, yeah, hey, this is great. I love parties. Let's have parties. Very ADHD. Let's have a party. Let's have a ball. Let's do this. Let's do this. And again, her conversation with Kristoff, where Kristoff is trying to propose, and then Anna just keeps getting sidetracked and having all these side thoughts. And what do you mean? Do you mean I'm ugly? Like, what? No, what? Are we going to die? Where did you come from with that? It's very, again, if you know, you know. So, but this is where Elsa goes off to the frozen sea of knowledge, the frozen river of knowledge. Sorry, it's a glacier, and Olaf brings up, as one might do on a long journey, every fact he knows, including that wombats' poops are cubes. Water apparently has memory. It's been in at least 4 or 5 humans and creatures throughout its existence. And this leads to the frozen river of knowledge, where it turns out Elsa is being called to that because that's what called her mother. And that's why they were lost in a shipwreck, because they were trying to figure out their origin, the origin of the Northumbrian people, and trying to figure out where all this comes from. And again, unfortunately, ABA style, how to stop it. But this is where Elsa sort of gives up the control and becomes, and this is a controversial thing that I am told because people disagree on the meaning of this. Does she die and become a spirit? Does she evolve? Either way, she becomes Elsa the White. She pulls a full Gandalf, and she is now fully in tune with her powers. Anna, again, not the best at forethought, decides to lure the gargantuan giants in to destroy this dam. She could have gotten killed around 80 times in the process. It
Yeah.
happens anyway. But again, long story short, the people are saved. Elsa rides in on a horse made of water, saves Arendelle, but decides that her true place is not at the head of Arendelle. It's to be in nature with the spirits. So again, is she dead? Is she a spirit? Is she just Elsa the White? Either way, she is her true, authentic self at this point. She has evolved from a very masked girl to being full on aware of herself, evolving her powers to become pure ice herself. She figures out who she is. And this is a very, very powerful path for anyone who's going through the unmasking process to figure out who you are. Because again, if you don't know who you are, what happens if your love of archaeology goes untested? You might be the greatest archaeologist in the world. You might be the greatest librarian in the world. Everyone who said, don't do that because that's impractical. Stop doing that. Do something. Work in a cubicle, and you're miserable. But when you finally unmask, you become who you truly are, and you are in your element, literally and metaphorically here. And you finally become yourself.
So it's like episode 1. Frozen 1 is like that journey that so many of us go through to get diagnosed. Like,
oh yes,
shit's not adding up. There's got to be something. For a lot of women, we end up getting diagnosed as something, bipolar, something that we're not, until we eventually get to the diagnosis. Obviously it's a different journey if you're diagnosed as a kid, and then, or maybe your kid is diagnosed and then you're like, oh, I have a lot of those traits.
No kidding. Yeah.
Right. So the way I'm like reframing Frozen now is this hero's journey to getting diagnosed is Frozen 1. She gets diagnosed. We feel really good at the end because we're like, yay, we have our diagnosis. And then usually what I find for people, and my process was 10 years. So that's fun. But usually what I find for people is there's like an integration process. I think I've talked to you about this. People will come to me right after they got their diagnosis and want to write a book. And I'm like, you don't even know you yet. Like, I won't work with those authors. I like people to be at least a year, if not 3 years out from diagnosis, because I know how much they're going to change.
Yeah.
And it goes through cycles, right? Like the way her posture changed at the end is like the first evolution, but you kind of have to settle into who you actually are instead of who you've been pretending to be.
Yeah.
And so Frozen 2 is that journey.
Yes.
But I feel like that's the journey that doesn't usually get as much attention. Everyone talks about getting their diagnosis. I'm like, what happens that day? I'll just pretend I'm giving you a diagnosis right now. You got it. You're diagnosed. Now what?
Exactly.
There's nothing magical because like a doctor person or an LPP, but just because somebody with lots of degrees that they've collected says you're autistic doesn't mean you can't make those modifications whether you get that diagnosis or not. You still got to do the unmasking process, figure out what your accommodations are, how you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But I don't care who is or isn't diagnosed. What I care is, do you know who you actually are? And are you making those accommodations for yourself?
When autistic people find a special interest, they go deep and have a lot of knowledge, even if they don't have that formal education background to go with it. If you want to capture your spin in a book, check out Angela's work at differencepress.com, differencepress.com, and find out more about becoming an author and establishing your credibility with a book.
And this is a big part about Frozen too, because when we find ourselves, that can be an incredibly lonely process. Because we have to we have to start shedding pieces of ourselves, piece at a time, to try to figure out, to get to the core of who we really are. Because oftentimes, especially if you've masked for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and you don't know who you are, you have to strip away all these elements of yourself to get to the core of yourself, to try to figure all this out. So in Frozen 2, Anna definitely wants to help Elsa on this journey, but she can't. So this is a big reason why Elsa makes a big ice boat, puts her in the ice boat, and says, nope, I got to do this on my own. Because this big journey is something that we can only do alone. We can only find ourselves by ourselves. Other people can be around, but it's up to us to do the introspection and to do the work and to do the therapy in order to uncover who we really are and what we really need, and figure out all of these elements of ourselves so that we can be happy and healthy and comfortable as openly autistic people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that work
God,
is hard.
that's huge. That
does not happen the day the doctor says or doesn't say you're autistic. Nothing magical happens that day. The magic is like the years and years of work and grief and processing and trying things, all the things you would have been doing if you, I mean, that's why I'm always, when kids are diagnosed, we have more and more kids being diagnosed younger. I'm like, how different is the world if you're diagnosed and accepted? If I was diagnosed and accepted at 7 or 5, who would I be? I wouldn't be making this podcast. I can tell you that.
It's a completely different identity journey, which is something we'll be covering in the new book coming out. But But that's the thing. This overcoming the trauma. There's often like this unresolved resentment, because when you finally figure out who you are, you're like, holy shit, why didn't anyone A, ever tell me, B, love me for who I really was, or C, tell me that I didn't have to hide myself.
Right. Yep. So much grief. Much grief.
Grief for yourself, grief for the kid that you could have been, grief for everything. And you have to relive a lot of your life. You have to re-go through a lot of your childhood. You have to reconnect with the person that you were from where you deviated years and years and years ago. And again, this is why Frozen 2, I believe Frozen 1 has the better songs, absolutely. But I think that Frozen 2 is a better movie.
Into the Great Unknown is
it's a very good
that's
song.
A great song. But the rest of it isn't as strong, but that storyline is so powerful. It is.
And this searching for your Elsa's hero's journey. She didn't have a hero's journey, again, because for 8 drafts, she was the villain. Yeah, but again,
Anna.
now with Frozen 2, she finally gets to have that hero's journey and find out who she is and find out how to be herself, which I look forward to a Frozen 3 now, because, this is where it really, really matters. And again,
I believe Frozen 3, can somebody have an autistic kid and be excited about that?
Yeah, that would be nice.
That'd be great. Again, let's do that.
Yeah. Again, I would like to see even more autistic stuff, because everything so far is heavily, heavily, heavily coded. And that's the neat thing about this, because when I was doing the research for, the Mythic Quest episode, because Poppy is explicitly autistic, I thought that people all over the internet were going to be talking about it. And I'll be like, oh, this is great, and this is great, and this is great.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
And like, oh my God, I have nothing to talk about.
That is. Why does everyone want to talk about Elsa being autistic? Is it because it's coded, and Poppy, it's like, I think we even see her diagnosis somewhere in Mythic Quest.
Quite possibly. But it might also be that, Mythic Quest is on Apple TV and not as advertised as much.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Frozen is a global phenomenon, won an Oscar. And
okay.
You know who loves movies? Autistic people. And then, you have all these kids coming in and saying, hey, I really identify with Elsa. Also, I really like things in a particular order. Also, I can only wear my Elsa dress because no other dresses will ever work now. And then, you say, well, this Elsa really reminds me of my kid, who apparently seems very autistic. And then the entire internet has agreed, minus one person But again, there's always one who says, there's too much of the tism out there. Blah, blah,
Right.
and fi and fum, and all of that. So, but that's the thing about it. It is definitely there, and the people who get it wholeheartedly, and that representation is important. But again, when I look at the songwriting duo, there are some interesting quirks there among them. I recommend, if you haven't already, because if you're listening to this episode, you may have already experienced Frozen. You may have already done your own research. You may have a whole bunch of YouTube videos saved. Yeah, you know. But again, the people who write the songs have a little neurospicy qualities to them too. So, they're
This
and
is the
again,
way.
yeah,
This is
exactly.
the way.
Yeah. So I am now a fan of the Frozen series. I can't wait to see where it goes, and I am wholeheartedly endorsing Elsa as one of us.
All right. Elsa is one of us, and maybe we'll learn more about Anna or her parents, because it's always a family thing, people.
It is.
It's always a family thing.
You never just find one.
No.
But on that note, hey Angela, what was your favorite part of being autistic this week?
Well, I have two things, and I'm going to share them both because
Oh,
our
good.
podcast episode is not running long for a change. So I'm going to tell you two stories. So I'm moving to England. I'm packing. And one of the things when my grandmother died that I got was her photo albums.
Ooh.
So I was going through her photo albums, and I found an entire photo album of her needlepoint.
Really?
I then moved on to an entire photo album of her cut glass collection. And finally,
because of course she has a cut glass collection. Why would you not?
Right. Why would you not? And then I found a photo album of her garden, but mostly her camellias. And
fascinating.
So in honor of Elsa and Anna's lineage as neurodivergent, I was like, my grandmother was always very easy to buy presents for, because you knew you either got her something for needlepoint, something for the garden, or some like cut glass, but you couldn't really get her cut glass because she would know more than you and you would buy the wrong thing. And then you would have to hear all of the fucking details about why you bought the wrong cut glass and the wrong artist and it wasn't the right pattern and whatever. So she had to do that.
This is the way.
Correct. So, but you could buy her things related, like display cabinetry, which then I had this memory of my childhood. So my grandmother's living room, like many grandmothers of the time, all the furniture was covered in plastic. You weren't allowed to sit there. There's this very beautiful French provincial furniture, and all of the curio cabinets and stuff had her cut glass collection. And so we used to play this game when I would come visit her. Like, no one would let me touch something like a piece of cut glass. Like, you would break it because you're a kid. So like, don't touch that. But I could touch it when we played shopkeeper, and we would rearrange the cut glass into her curio cabinets by different categories. So she'd be like, okay, now find all the buttons and bows and put together the buttons and bows. And we're going to do a buttons and bows section in our store.
Oh,
and I got to touch the glass. How good is that? How fucking good is that?
Because play is organization. Yeah.
Right? Play is organization. Put them in categories. I got to touch the glass. I had to be super careful. It was the room with the plastic furniture. And so, yes. So anyway, here's the next fascinating thing about our culture. And I am very excited for you to explain this to me. My grandmother came from an extremely poor family. She did not get past 8th grade. And really, I don't think she got past 6th grade. We talked a lot about the chamber pots because she did not have a bathroom growing up. So she always had to empty the chamber pots. Many of her siblings died of tuberculosis in sanatoriums. And so she was like raising her siblings because everybody died, and like super poor, didn't go to school. could not write, would sign an X as her name, like could barely write, definitely couldn't read. How did she know every fucking thing about cut glass, needlepoint, and camellias? Every fucking thing in the world she knew.
Because autistics find a way.
I mean, there were no spreadsheets. There was no library trips. And I'm like, and I remember her teaching me everything about these three things.
Of course.
That's why she liked being with me. It was nonstop info dumps. And
Yeah.
I took everything she said as gospel. Like she seemed to know.
Yeah.
But I have no idea how this knowledge was acquired. If I could not read or write, how would I acquire knowledge? There's no internet and you can't read or write. How do you acquire knowledge?
That is the fascinating thing, because that's the thing about data. We seek it out wherever it is, even if it's just like an old lady on the corner, you know, rambling about glass, and you say, that is a source of wisdom. I will stay here for hours and memorize in great detail.
Right. And then she had to memorize everything. Like, think of how smart she must have been. Like, just the brain capacity. Like, if you told me about my special interest, I would have to like write it down, categorize it. But she would go, I remember we would go to like flea markets all the time. And she would talk to the guy behind the counter at the flea market, or we would go to nurseries or garden centers, and she would talk to the person behind the counter. But then she just memorized everything.
This is a big thing because there are so many people from the lost generations, so many lost autistics out there have been told throughout their life that, they're bad at something because they have like a reading disability. They might have dyslexia. They might not have had the opportunity to have a formal education.
Right.
So they're very, very down on themselves, but yet incredibly bright and able to memorize these things because it instantly sticks in their hyperconnected brain.
Right. And that's like one of the core features of our culture is this information hunger.
Yes.
And I just had this feeling looking through these photo albums, like I come from a long line of people with strong information hunger, like so much like pride in like my birthright is information hunger. So cool.
One of my favorite kids that I know, the one word that identified him is the phrase "why," said with that same cadence and rhythm every single time, because like this thing happens. Why? Well, because of this and this and this. Why? Because of this and this. Because the answer is not satisfactory until you get to the core of it, and you say, "Oh, okay, that makes sense," and then he goes on about his business.
Right.
Because this is the way. We want to know. We want to learn. Our brains crave understanding. And when people say, "because I said so," that is not satisfactory. That is not an answer. We need to know the actual reason behind literally all the things. We need to know everything that we need to know.
So when like the lady in the handicraft store would tell my grandmother something about needlepoint, it either stuck and it made sense, or she went home and would like reverse engineer it.
Yes.
She had these like ways of counting her stitches. There was so much counting. I always knew when I could talk and not talk if my grandmother was counting her stitches. And she had these processes and systems for it, where somebody probably suggested something. It either worked or it didn't. But then she actually like created science experiments.
She went into the lab to replicate the results herself.
Yes.
As one does.
Right, Matt. So that's my first. I absolutely love that about being autistic this week.
Oh, yes.
Like, autism pride every day here.
Oh, yeah.
And then number 2, I don't know, I might regret this one, but I'm going to link it in the show notes. People like to call autistics weird. That's one of their favorite words for us.
I've been called weird. Yes.
Yes. So I have a slew of people who are referring to me moving to England as weird, or me being weird, or I don't know, the way I'm moving is weird, or something about my move is weird, but no one can explain to me what it is. Like I have asked, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, how do other people do it? Is it because I didn't send out on moving notes. Like I didn't tell people, but I did marry a British guy 10 years ago. Like, I'm like, what? I don't understand this.
Would have never seen that relation to Great Britain coming by marrying a... Yeah.
Right. I'm like, why is this weird? So I put together a 33-page PowerPoint deck called Is It Weird That I'm Moving to the UK? A historical analysis of 35 years of Angela's life.
As any neurotypical would do. Yeah, because neurotypicals love 33 deck presentations.
Oh, so, but I did make it neurotypical friendly, I think, sort of, although it's probably weird that I made a PowerPoint deck explaining that it's not weird that I'm moving to England. But I did like lots of pictures and little short graphics. You guys can enjoy it and comment and let me know if you think it's weird that I'm moving. I will tell you, my family probably thinks it's weird. I sent them a PowerPoint answering their question because I couldn't answer it because they wouldn't explain to me what they thought was weird. So I had to think of every possible fucking thing that could be weird about it and provide detailed commentary, pictures, notes, and graphs. You're welcome.
You need the graphs. You need the graphs. You need the charts. You need the explanation because, again, how else are you going to actually answer this question?
Right. I'm like, is it weird? Let's find out.
Yeah.
But now I'm pretty sure I have proven I'm weird by doing a PowerPoint on being weird. Somehow this will all get wielded against me. And I'm sure everyone will be talking about behind my back about how it's weird that I thought that they thought that I was weird for thinking that I was weird. Pretty sure. Somehow I'll lose.
You should have included some cut glass.
I really should have. Yeah. I really should have. Oh, that's what I got. I don't know.
Yeah. This is the way.
Yeah.
This is absolutely the way.
Oh my goodness. I struggle. One of the things growing up that I heard the most often was, Angela, stop singing. And I did make it through most of this episode without singing, not all of it. But I do now need to end this recording immediately and listen to every single song from Frozen back to back for the next 12 hours.
Plus the Broadway musical. Add the Broadway musical. Plus the lost songs, because there are lost songs and you can find them as well.
I will find them. So,
yeah. I am allowed to sing exactly one song because my son is a Gestalt language processor. I am allowed to sing Rainbow Connection, but I am not allowed to sing any other song because my voice does not... it is not any of the professional songs. So
doesn't matter.
Hence why...
Do you do a little Kermit voice when you do Rainbow Connection?
Oh no, I just use my own voice. But since I've sang to him since he was in the womb, that is acceptable. But all other songs have to be sung by the original person, and it has to be the studio recording, and nothing else is acceptable because it doesn't match the picture in his brain. So he will get irrationally angry if, it does not match up with that. Yeah,
I gotta say, I get it.
As is the way.
I get it. I get it, my guy.
Indina Menzel can do "Let It Go." I don't have the range for that.
That's why when they put the second artist on the Disney albums, like the popular artist, I'm a no for that. No. That's like a crime against humanity.
That's not going to happen. No.
Anyway, okay.
Madness.
I don't know. Tell me something fun about your autistic heritage in the comments. Tell me whether you like Elsa or Anna more. Tell me something good. Matt and I love reading your comments. You can find us over at autisticculturepodcast.com. That's autisticculturepodcast.com. Find us now in stores everywhere or on the internet everywhere. That's what I got. See you guys later.
Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Autistic Culture Podcast.
If you like this show, you can help other people find it by taking a few minutes to rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
You can find out more about writing your book with me at differencepress.com. That's difference, DIFFERENCE, press, PRESS.com.
Or getting a psychological evaluation or consult with me at www.mattlowrylpp.com. That's M-A-T-T, Matt Lowry, L-O-W-R-Y, LPP, as in licensed psychological practitioner.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and remember,
no one ever changed the world by being like everyone else.
Special thanks to our content manager, River Robbins, and Aaron Stoner, our producer, for making us look and sound good.